Hello and welcome. And I'm doing a little strange thing today. Here is a knife that most people are probably familiar with. Maybe not the scales exactly, but this is the Benchmade Bugout. This has been kind of a popular knife for quite a while for it being thin, incredibly lightweight, and all that sort of stuff. However, Benchmade's pricing is going astronomically through the roof right now. So I have one of these guys, and it was a limited or dealer exclusive sort of thing. And I've done some aftermarket stuff to it, but unless you're really willing to pay a significant sum of money here, I think there's probably better options. But all right, let's go ahead and start off. This was the Knife Center exclusive variant of it. So this had 20 CV blade steel instead of the S35 from the original one. It had some G10 scales on it rather than the FRN or Grivory or Grivex or whatever the hell that they actually used. It wasn't. I think maybe some of them use CF Elite now, but that wasn't what they started out with. Either way, these had some grade G10 scales on there, which still, when I got this guy, they were kind of clearing out the rest of these around a holiday time. So I actually got the knife for about 150 bucks, and for that, it was a great purchase. But that is not the price that that knife would go for these days. And it's also very much lower than you can get a standard bug out for. So, yeah. I've also done some upgrades sort of thing on this guy. We got some Berkshire Forge titanium scales on here, which I decided to take a little bit of a gamble on. And, after having to do a little bit of a modification or purchased separate components, I should say, um, then these guys are actually working out all right. And I do have a Lynch Northwest clip on here. This is using the blacksmith finish. Um, and yeah, I originally had this on my Griptilian, but kind of liked it a little bit more on the bug out instead. The modification I mentioned was actually the barrel spacers on the upgraded versions, i.e., all the dealer exclusives like the one from Knife Center, the one from Worksharp with the yellow scales that's still out there, or the S90V variant with carbon fiber. Their barrels are different, and these particular Berkshire Forge scales don't compensate for that like the ones from Flightanium do. I did actually mention that back to a Knife Center because these Berkshire Forge company or whatever is associated with them. Either they're the sole distributor or they're actually kind of affiliated or something like that. Either way, I let them know. Hopefully, they've changed the description on there to mention that if you do have an upgraded version, um, you do need different hardware to be able to put this guy together here. But still, it is what it is. This thing is still nice and thin. Not quite as light because, well, titanium is definitely heavier than G10. Well, there you go. And we do have quite an excellent heat treat on the 20 CV blade steel here. Y'all know and either love or really don't like the this guy here. I do find it pretty amusing how this knife is fairly small, but I can still get a nice full forefinger grip on this guy here. However, this is kind of me saying that I think that for most people, the CJRB Pyrite makes a heck of a lot more sense. And yes, that is the caveat that these guys are not made in America, sure. But you also have to kind of understand a little bit that Benchmade's pricings are absolutely crazy, and other U.S. made manufacturers are much more sane on their prices and price increases over the years than Benchmade has. So I do actually hold that against Benchmade a little bit. You know, something like, oh, we came out with a limited version of the bailout that has a Cerakote. It's $600 just for the M4. It just baffles my mind. But okay, anyway. So, CJRB Pyrite, we can see very, very similar in proportions here. This, of course, does have a button lock. That is going to be weaker than a crossbar lock. However, I do kind of carry the sentiment that something like this bug out, or I guess possibly the narrows as well, which is even thinner, and also crazy, crazy expensive. You won't be putting any kind of pressures on these knives that would actually cause those locks to fail. That and these guys don't uh, end up failing from doing a simple spine wax thing that some others can. So, in this particular one, for the pyrites, I would probably suggest the ones that don't have steel liners on there. Like I've said in some videos in the past, I have had problems with any kind of a steel linered button lock knife where they can kind of bind up on you, especially around season changes and stuff like that. Whereas these guys, because there's a lot more mass behind there, they don't warp anywhere near as much, so I don't really have any problems with it. But these guys still have a powder metallurgy steel. It's called AR RPM 9, AR for artisan cutlery. Um, and it's essentially a powder metallized version of 9CR 18 MOV, which is pretty close, not identical, but pretty close to 440C. But doing a kind of powder metallurgy kind of stuff to it. So it's interesting. It's definitely better than 440C. Um, Maybe around or slightly below something that you would get out of CPM 154, which is the powder metallized version of 154 CM, which a lot of other manufacturers are using and stuff like that. Either way, this thing basically acts, as far as edge retention goes, right around what you would get from kind of some, the normal D2 kind of blade steel. Maybe not a custom heat treat sort of stuff on it, but most of the normal D2 that you end up getting out there. But of course, it is much more stainless, especially with them opting to do a stonewash finish on there, which adds a heck of a lot of surface area and actually does keep rust at bay more than if you were to do something like a bead blast finish. And this guy is fantastic for $50, and they keep it right around there. It might have crept up a few dollars or something like that over time. It might be 55. I'm not quite sure. And these are, of course, U.S. prices I'm talking about, in case you're international and you might think I'm talking about Australian, which a lot of Aussies like to refer to their money as dollary dues instead of dollars to make that sort of make sense. And Canadian dollars, sure. And there's somewhere in Southeast Asia, maybe Malaysia, that also uses dollar as an increment of money. I don't know. But yeah, this thing is great. The ergonomics on it end up working out fantastically. I can still get a nice full four-finger grip on here. That last finger does kick up a little bit, but it's still absolutely contributing all the way to the power that you get behind those cuts. Both of them equally have very, very thin blade stocks here. They're right around the same at actually, let me check that out. I do have my spreadsheet here. So the bug out is 2.25 millimeters of blade stock thickness, and the pyrite is 2.6. So it is a bit thicker, but it's still, they both have very, very similar grinds. I have absolutely no problems whatsoever getting a little bit of getting basically the same kind of a slicey action out of the CJRB that I do out of the Bugout here. The button lock is super fun to play with, and you also have the thumb studs that you can play around with on that guy. Whereas you also have that finger safe kind of opening here with the crossbar lock that you also have the thumb studs for. However, doing a reverse flick, usually with a crossbar lock, is a little bit more difficult, since the crossbar kind of actuation points are fairly subdued. Like you see, they don't stick out from the handles almost at all. It is a little bit easier to do on this than some others, but both of them end up working out quite well. Both of them have lanyard holes on them in case that's something that you want to do. But these guys do have a lot more different variations that you can get. Like I said, I don't particularly prefer the ones that'll have the steel liners. For one, they are proud of the scales that they put on top, which I don't actually like much. It kind of it's like a poor man's version of contouring, and it just ends up having those liners kind of stick out and then into both your bottom fingers here as well as the top, where you're actually putting a lot of pressure. Which kind of annoys me. But these steel versions, which are basically the same price, $50, don't have that issue. I haven't had any kind of lock stick or instability that I would get out of something from liners that have kind of warped from true after they were put together. We can see we have a lot of weight relieving going on in here with them. And this is a fantastic knife. It is, however, the grip on it, with this guy here, the standard steel one, maybe a little bit slippery, especially compared to the standard Grivory or G10, if you're lucky, handle scales on the Bugout there. But they do kind of have a bit of an answer to that, and that is this guy here, which right now is my favorite. This is the CJRB Pyrite that we all know and love. However, the handle scales in this particular case are titanium. They did not do the that kind of pyramidal weight relieving on here, so this thing is a little bit heavier, even though titanium's lighter than steel, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. But there's a little bit more material that they hadn't removed from it. But with the titanium sandblasting on here, just gives you a wonderful amount of grip. Maybe not if you are profusely sweating or something like that on your hands. Might be a little bit difficult, but at that point, you really, really probably do need something with some crazy bidirectional texturing or something like that, like this Spyderco Endura or something like that. Because once you get past a certain point, even something like G10 can lose some of its grip. But this thing ends up dealing with that grip problem quite a bit. It does have a bit of a finger choil on there. It's not large enough for my fingers, so your mileage may vary there. And that does kind of change the amount of cutting length between there. However, because of that, the thumb stud on these guys does not get anywhere near in the line of the cutting action, whereas it does a little bit with the Benchmade here, which for the most part isn't generally that much of a problem. It can be on some. I've run into problems with like my Benchmade 940 with stuff like that in the past, but not so much this here. However, it is a little bit easier if you're using a fixed angled sharpening system or something like that to not worry about that thumb stud kind of getting in the way, because the edge isn't way further back. So yeah, there's not a whole lot else to say with these guys. They do have some other really, really crazy designs on these. There's one with like S90V blade steel with a titanium bolster and some carbon fiber sort of stuff that's all contoured, but they're like $200 at that point. That seems kind of neat, but you're probably at that point much better off going with a bug out of some sort. Mostly because, well, the S90V Benchmade pretty much does a lot better heat treat job than most of the Asian counterparts. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it is, at least from my experience. So at that point, you would probably get around the same kind of cutting performance, maybe a little bit more out of the Chinese S90V than you would out of the standard S30V or whatever that you would get out of a normal bug out. But still, yeah, with this guy having 20 CV, it is quite nice. But yeah, these guys are a little bit more expensive. When I purchased this, it was about $80 instead of the 50. So you are paying a bit more. Obviously, that makes sense with it being titanium for the handle scales. I am a little bit surprised that they didn't do any of the weight relieving on the inside. That would have made this thing, I think, just that much bit better. But because of that, the handle is a little bit heavier than it would otherwise be. So your center of balance is further back. That does actually make the blade feel a little bit lighter or easier to wield than it would otherwise. With the steel-handled one, it still ends up working out all right. I don't really have a problem with the balance on any of them, but still, if you do have a bit more weight in the back, it does make the blade feel a little bit more lively, easier to move around or something like that, if you're doing a lot of blade manipulation in between cuts or something like that. But yeah, that's just basically everything that I really wanted to cover here. Is the Benchmade Bugout is a nice lightweight knife. And its prices are getting way too much for what I think is probably reasonable. And you can get a CJRB Pyrite for much less money that has a very similar ergonomic feel, cutting geometry. You're still getting powder metallurgy steel, even though it's not going to hold an edge anywhere probably quite as long as one of these guys here, but you also don't need crazy diamond stones or whatever just to be able to attempt to sharpen it. Whereas, yeah, the 20 CV on this did take me a long time to actually get a decent profile and all that sort of stuff. So, long story short, and most people probably already know that, the CJRB Pyrite is a legit fantastic knife. Probably one of those knives that's going to go down as one of those classics, like a Rat Number 1, or like this Bugout, of course, or I don't know, the Spyderco PM2 or something like that. Something that really sticks around for a very long time. Something that I think CJRB actually thought was going to happen with the RIA, but it kind of came and went, fell off a bit, and it's nowhere near as popular overall as this guy is here. So yeah, there you go. If you want to support a whole bunch of U.S. business and stuff like that, even though maybe their pricing is kind of getting a little out of control, I would say definitely go for a Bugout. They're not a bad knife, especially if you actually get one with G10 scales instead of the Grivory, or do some aftermarket stuff to it like I've done here. Or if you don't have or want to spend that kind of money on a fantastic knife that's going to get you 90% of the way there, that's what the CJRB Pyrite's for. And it's there in a million different variations. If you don't mind having those steel liners on there like I tend to avoid, then there's G10 and micarta and carbon fiber and a whole bunch of different handle scales and stuff like that you can get. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Basically, really expensive but a decent knife after doing some modification to it, and a really decent knife right out of the box for a very affordable cost. So alrighty, there we go. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. It is what it is. So, yeah, as always, I appreciate y'all for watching. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. And like, comment, and subscribe if you made it this far. I'd appreciate it at least. Catch y'all in the next one.